It has been well documented in the media that there are 8 new players that have been planned to be recruited to Newcastle United, which makes it look likely that there's going to be a similar amount of exits of number of players leaving Newcastle. So, is this a season of reboot? Let's find out right here on Toon Tactics TV, folks.
Oh, brilliant from Sham. And now Murphy can take on the shot. Fabian Schär
Okay. What an incredible blessing, as always, folks, it is to see you. I hope you guys are having a fantastic Friday. Wherever you are, whatever you're doing, you could be anywhere in the world, but you're right here with me listening to Toon Tactics TV. And you guys have been absolutely phenomenal. I know the international break kind of slows a lot of things down, but it gives us a lot of reflective time actually. And what I've been blessed to do really in the last couple of sessions. Last week we did like a 3 hour, no, Tuesday, excuse me, we did like a 3 hour session with Mitch, really breaking it down. What is happening with Newcastle? What, my phone is going off. What is happening in Newcastle in terms of the season so far? Uh, what's been the reason for our league form? Is Eddie Howe at fault? Is he not at fault? Plus, looking at player rating, player scouting, and everything else. Analyzing the various transfer rumors and exits and doing some scouting reports, of which we'll be doing some today. So we had a lot of time to reflect, and this show, and in this show we're going to be doing some more reflection and some more kind of in-depth analysis, as always. And you can tell from the title itself is that, more than a reboot, the 8-man purge. So tonight we are, it's been reported by the likes of Keith Downey and Sky Sports. I can't remember if Craig Hope's done it, but I think Mark Douglas and others have been saying, look, it's looking like Newcastle will likely to bring in as many as 8 players into Newcastle. And this definitely means going to be a lot of exits. And we're not just talking about players out of contracts, we're talking about first team players. Obviously, the world documented, the world has been doing the rounds in terms of Bruno Gomes and Tonali and Livramento and Gordon, all these players we're going to talk about, but especially the 2 midfielders and them exiting, them leaving, and who's going to come in and what kind of change it's going to be. And so that's caused me to think about, okay, there's all these changes, like how I'm going to give a general overview of my thoughts in terms of how the squad could look towards the end of the summer. Hopefully, and I believe that Mr. Ross Wilson, with the support of the CEO and others, would have been able to do their job. So we're going to talk about that, the overall view of Newcastle United. Before that, we're going to talk about a video from Adam Clery. And if you guys know Adam Clery, he's a phenomenal football analyst. And he's a Geordie, he's a Newcastle fan too. And he did a brilliant video, I think, in terms of trying to drill down in terms of just how responsible or directly responsible Eddie Howe is for the season, and should Newcastle move on from him. And I'm going to touch on a few points from that video. I've made some various clips and notes from that video that we're going to talk about. But before we get into that, there is a few. Obviously, I wanted to first, let me find my notes first on it so I don't lose track of it. So when it's time, here we go. I found it. So, but at first, there is other little bits and pieces that I think are important to pick up in terms of that I've bookmarked. So because there's tons of little things about the stadium, about here and there that I always miss out on. So I'm just gonna get it on my X account so we can talk about it. But before I do, I want to first find myself where I am, and before I so yeah, we've got this one, we've got that one. No investments. Miley. Just making sure I got everything. Yes. So there's a couple of things I want to touch on with you guys. That obviously doesn't make the news as much as the other stuff really, and the transfers and stuff. But I think it's important because it all counts. Before I do that, as you guys know, I'm always encouraged to see people in the chat, especially before I start the show. Really fires me up, really encourages me. So it's good to see. That's a long name there. My apologies. True Shanjen Christensen. True. Let me know if I said that right. Hopefully, if I didn't, my biggest apologies. Let me know if there's a shorter version I can call you. But thank you again for sending in your comment. And you said rebooting how is like teaching a fish to. It's like teaching a fish to run. All right. And he says, "Hey Philip, hey to you, sir. God bless you, or Madame. I hope all is well with you. We need a manager." He says, "We need a manager change. How can't manage more than one game a week, and we can't wait for how to get this in 5 to 6 years time." It's a very interesting point of view. We're going to be talking a lot more in depth about that in a moment. Before we do that, as I mentioned, I want to cover some of the other news concerning Newcastle. Bits and bobs. But it's important to kind of, I think, before we get into the Adam Clery video, the overall view of the squad and transfer rumors and scouting profiles, the bits and the meat of it. I do think it's important to pick up on just a few other things that are going on in the background. And actually, a lot of these things, they also I think they also impact in terms of the overall, all these little things, bits on the side also kind of add to the kind of the grander picture. And this is one of those reports here. So in this regarding to our, CEO, Mr. David Hopkinson, who's been in the job now, 4 to 6 months, something like that. And he's had 100-day review and he's been doing all the rounds and with Ross Wilson, and he's been meeting people. And from what I've observed and from what I've seen, he is, I maybe not publicly, but I think internally he's making waves. He's already sacked a few people, not sacked, but a few people have left. I think Silverstone, the financial guy, has left as well. So he's making his presence felt. So this is a report here. It's not from Magpie 24/7 though. God bless him. I think he's reporting it from another source. But it says anyway, following his 100-day review, David Hopkinson has officially introduced a new cultural framework at St. James's Park known as the Newcastle United Code. Now, if anybody's been in any kind of form of leadership before, or even under kind of any leadership, whether formally at work in a corporate world, or maybe in your local church or anything like that, every good organization, every good kind of hierarchy, kind of service has these things you call behavioral codes of practice. They're there to set the culture for that organization, in terms of behavior, in terms of from each individual, from also bosses to subordinates to bosses, men that set the culture. Depending on that organization, they'll value different behaviors in different way. Obviously, depending if you're in a financial world you're working for public organization, obviously they're going to prioritize and they're going to esteem certain behaviors more than others. But the main thing, what any good leader at the highest of those areas, the highest at the pinnacle of those areas, their aim is to set the vision for those organizations. And not only set the vision, which is obviously where they're going to, how they're going to get to, and we know that the vision for Newcastle United that Hopkinson has said is that by 2030, I think, or 2031, something along those lines, he wants Newcastle to be one of the top teams, top clubs in the world, and when he sets that vision in terms of that's where he wants Newcastle to go to, the very next thing to do is explain how they're going to do that. That's the operational. There's the operational part of that, but there's also kind of the objectives in terms of how the vision is going to be delivered itself. Now, some of those, like I said, operational things are recruitment and performance, but a lot of those things obviously are also there's other things towards that, which is the culture of the organization, the behaviors that are there. So hence why it's very interesting that in terms of not just from the players, the coaches, but also the staff, internal staff, whether it's your COO, whether it's your janitor, whoever is there, there's a code of behavior, there's a spirit of excellence, hopefully, that the higher ups are trying to set. So let's see what they're. So this is what he means when they may say the Newcastle code. This is the how of how they're going to set that culture that's going to get them to the place they want to be. So the CEO identified a lack of alignment across various departments, which is true. Even Dan Ashworth did that. Paul Mitchell did that as well. Despite obviously, let me see if you guys can see this. Maybe I need to zoom in a little bit. Yeah, let me zoom in a little bit. I don't want to click on it. Here we go. Start again then. Fine, we'll just do it this way. Just wanted to make sure you guys can see this. The furthest I can zoom. Yeah, okay. So make sure you guys can see it. Yeah, here we go. So the CEO identified lack of alignment across various departments during his due diligence and is now moving to unite the club's subsections under 5 core values. And again, we just talked about the how. He's telling you the how they're going to get to where they're going to do. So he's going to unite all these departments that have not been connected, that have been disconnected, disjointed, and he's going to unite them all under 5 core values. And what are those values? One club, excellence, relentless, accountable, and integrity. Now, I won't be able to break down what all these are because I don't know what these are unless obviously I can get the behavioral codes. But he's obviously created the Newcastle code that's going to get them to where they want to be. One club, so it indicates that it's going to be United, Newcastle United. Excellence, obviously excelling. Relentless, so not stopping, essentially. Keep pursuing, keep getting better. I'm assuming accountable. So that success, that whatever it is you're accountable to somebody to make sure you get to where you want to be. And integrity, and obviously I know integrity to be you are the person when nobody's looking. That's who you truly are. God help us. David Hawkinson believes this shift in mindset is essential for accelerating progress on and off the pitch. His transformation plan received a unanimous board. And it's, again, by the way, David believes this shift in mindset is essential for accelerating progress on and off the pitch. And that goes back to what I said earlier. What's the vision? The vision is by 2030, 2031, Newcastle are known and regarded as one of the top clubs in the world. And you have to be a top club not only on the pitch, but off the pitch too. His transformation plan received unanimous board approval in December. So this is already like 3-4 months ago, with a key focus on streamlining. And this is the part I really like, because this is super, super, super important in my opinion. With a key focus on streamlining decision-making by allowing more autonomy at a local level. The club aims to remove previous delays caused by a constant need for sign-off from PIF. And for me, this is really, really important because I guess I'm looking from it from a recruitment point of view, where a lot of the reasons why we didn't get a lot of our signings over the line during the summer, well, the big reason is obviously Paul Mitchell doing a runner 24 hours before the transfer window opened. and Eddie Howe having to be called back from his holiday to then do Paul Mitchell's job. But what didn't help Eddie Howe was that whenever they had deals lined up, it took them absolutely ages to get these deals signed off by PIF and to get them over the line. And by the time they were signed off, they missed out on so many opportunities, some of them being James Trafford, João Pedro, Hugo Ekitike. That's a lot of these deals didn't get over the line because of that. So it's really, really good to hear that one of some of the first things that Mr. Hopkins has done and has persuaded PIF to do, because PIF would have had to let go some responsibility and delegate that to people. I'm assuming Hopkinson and Mr. Ross Wilson, when they say autonomy at a local level, the clubs need to remove previous delays by a constant need of sign off. So that sign off would who now then does a sign off, I would assume would be Hopkinson. So Ross Wilson will come to him, Eddie Howe will come to him, the staff will come to him and say, hey, these are the players that we want. These are the wages that they want. Da, da, da. Please, can you sign this off? Hopkinson would have the money ready. I'm assuming it's going to be Hopkinson that does that. They don't have to go back to PIF to do it. And yes, here we go, sign it off. And so we can move with a little bit more haste, a little bit more coordination. And it finishes off by saying, so that's I'm really happy to hear that. That he's done that. And the last bit, it says the Canadian executive continues to voice a bold long-term vision. This is the vision, we talked about it earlier, telling the fan advisory board that his goal is to establish a high-performance culture that puts Newcastle in the hunt for the Premier League title. Okay, in the hunt for so this is back to the vision we talked about. Come back to what I said. That his goal is to establish a high-performance culture that puts Newcastle in the hunt for a Premier League title by 2030. So that's quite a change, because he was saying, I remember when he was on TalkSport, he was saying to be the best club in one of the best clubs in the world. Now he's in the hunt, competing for the club in 2030. Okay. It shifted it a little bit from what I heard him say on TalkSport, which was we will be top club by 2030, excuse me. Now we're saying we're going to be in the hunt. So make of that of what you will. Regardless, the vision is there. So we've got something to hold on him to, especially as well. I thought that was him. No, it's Christopher Hoskins. He says, see, there was me thinking recruitment of a DOF and leadership of a manager and winning means nor or more that a CEO talking rubbish are problems. Is poor manager in game. I'm not catching that, Christopher. You have to explain that to me. See, there was me thinking recruitment of a director of football and leadership of a manager and winning means more that a CEO talking rubbish. Our problem is a poor manager in the game. So yeah, I don't get it, Christopher. Please, my apologies. If you can explain that to me, I don't want to assume you're saying something when you're not saying it. So if you can, do clarify that for me. Tim, God bless you. Good to see you. Tim says, I say this with heavy heart regarding Eddie, but Iriola is the man to bring in this summer. We're gonna drill down this management stuff in a moment, so hold on to that thought, Tim. Or let me know why you think Iriola instead of Eddie Howe's the man. I would love to hear. Okay, maybe there's a couple things I wanted to talk about. Okay, another thing was to talk about was well, one thing to touch on is to say, yes, our Romayan from Miami was saying that His Excellency Yasser Al-Marayan from Miami, we will launch the new phase of the fund strategy within the coming weeks, which is good to hear. We are committed to our global investments and the fund in long-term investors. So that's good, because obviously what we've been hearing most of the time is that they'll be reducing their global investments on the back of obviously a lot of the conflicts and wars in the region, which I think is understandable for what's happening. But he's kind of saying the opposite here. And that touches another thing in terms of rumors and kind of conversations people are having, is that Newcastle have purchased, and I think actually That leads me. Let me find it first. That Newcastle had purchased training ground, the land for a training ground, excuse me, in is it Walsingham? Let me see if I can find it. One of our journalists. Where is it? Here we go. So if any of you guys know Joe Bland, I think he's really, really good. Really, really good guy in terms of his I don't know if he'll call himself a journalist, but he says he's working in marketing and recruitment, but he's in national papers and freelance journalist, I think he might describe himself, but I think he's quite good. But he, and not just him, but others have said that um, purchase of land purchase of land for new training ground at Walsington Hall. So if you guys, anyone from Newcastle and knows where Walsington Hall is, do let us know. Hall seemingly gone through for NUFC. That's good. Earlier this week, a Northeast-based solicitor group handed an application into the land registry. Hopefully get official statement soon. But pretty much indicates there's been a change in ownership, which is good. So already plans on the way for the training ground. PDF available online to those with portal accounts on HM Land Registry. Can do some further digging if anybody knows the intricacies. So that's good. So at least training ground stuff is on the way, which is positive to hear. One more thing I wanted to talk about before we get into the nitty and the gritty of the other things is, it's already there. I had it there. I was way more organized than I thought I was. Here we go. Let me put this up. Oh, I took it off. Took the whole thing off. Thank goodness I checked. Amidst all the exits that Newcastle have been linked to, all the player exits that Newcastle have been linked to, it's good to hear that the heir apparent, future King of the North, Mr. Lewis Miley, and this is according to Fabrizio Romano as of 25th of March. And it doesn't surprise me that it's Fabrizio Romano because I think Lewis Miley's camp have been in contact with him on various other times as well. Times when they were pushing for a move out and stuff like that. So they have a connection with Fabrizio Romano. So this story is very, very credible in my opinion. Anyway, Fabrizio says Newcastle are in talks for a new contract with Lewis Miley. Negotiations on. Positive. Young, talented midfielder. Very talented. Super talented. He is of strong interest to several top clubs. That is true. Newcastle want to give their hometown player a new deal and build into the future with him as a main player in the team. And I'm very, very excited about that. I'm hoping that we produce and continue to develop and produce an academy that could have a lot more Lewis Mileys all over the pitch, to be honest. So I'm really, really hoping for that. And this year, after this season, next season anyway, the 26-27 season, if either Tonali or Bruno leave, which seems very, very likely, this will be his major opportunity to step up. And he has been stepping up, but to step up as a regular first teamer. And I, for one, am excited about that. All right, so Christopher says, I'm saying this CEO can talk as much waffle as he wants. Only recruitment from a CEO and manager who can get best out of players and prove tactics to win games will bring in sponsors. Okay. CEO can talk as much as what we've got from CEOs who can get players out of the best out of players and move. Only a CEO and a manager can get the best out of players. I don't know if you're criticizing him. I don't know, or you're criticizing the man. I think Eddie Howe. I think you're gonna talk about Eddie Howe in a moment. Philip, Eddie Howe can adapt to teams. Can't adapt to teams' tactics. Excuse me. He is not going to lead this team, and he can't handle Europe and the Premier League. He lets his players do what they want. Sorry, we deserve better coach, more competent coach. Now, I disagree, but before I get into it too much, I want to be able to talk about the Adam Cleary video, and we can talk about this more extensively. But I appreciate you, Christopher, for handing it, and I think a few others have said it as well. So I'm really keen to get people's views, and I appreciate you sending that in. Christopher says, Newcastle have signed a 16-year-old talent today. Oh, has it been confirmed? There was big news about it. Like, I'm quite surprised. 16 years old, like a lot of big outlets have been talking about it. He must be a hell of a player. I like to be, like, I'll look into him, but he's 16 years old. You know, I like to do my scouting profiles and everything else like that, but he's not going to be playing for Newcastle next season. But it's still worth, I guess, it's still worth a look because a lot of big like outlets have been looking to him. But it's good news though. It's good news. It's good news, and I appreciate you for sending that through, Hoskins. All right, all right. So that's the news. Miley's looking to get a contract. Training ground purchased. Mr. Hoskins has created a new code, Newcastle code of behavior to get internally to get them to become a big club. But also, what I think is really, really important, it sounds like he's cut or he's streamlined. He's not only connected the various departments through these 5 core behaviors, but um, he's also streamlined the internal kind of inner workings of Newcastle, where they don't have to get signed off from PIF all the time, which I think is important, and that's going to help us move in the market a lot more swiftly, which I love to hear. So he was going to join in 2028. Okay, so he's going to be like 18 or something. So that's phenomenal. So he continued. Yeah, I think we should keep doing this stuff. So that's really good. So some good news in the back room. All right, let's get into. I'm going to take my hat off for this one. I'm getting hot. A lot of folks want to talk about Eddie Howe. We're going to talk about Eddie Howe. We're going to talk about Newcastle. And we're going to break it down via this Adam Clery video. I rate him very highly, Mr. Cleary. I really, really enjoy his talks on football and how he breaks things down. Whether you agree he's with his end conclusions or not, even how he gives his conclusions, I think are very wisely put. I'll be amazed if I ever reach that kind of level of way of putting things, but I think he's really, really good. Now, I'm not going to be watching a whole video or anything like that. I'm going to start from the end almost to get to the point of what we're trying to get to get to his conclusion, which is, can Newcastle get better than Eddie Howe? Yes. So let's talk about that. He does say it here. He says yes, but he breaks it down even further. And if you haven't watched the video, I do encourage you guys to watch the video first. So let's get into it because it's going to lead off to other kind of conversations as well, of stuff that we talked about before. Let me make sure I get it on here. Share. And then we'll all talk about it together. All right, so let's get into it. So this is where this is 16 minutes into the video of a 19-minute video, right? So again, to be fair to him, you have to watch the first 16 minutes to understand how he got to this conclusion. And we're actually going to listen to not only 16 minutes, but the couple minutes after that as well, because there's a whole load of kind of caveats that he puts that he kind of adds to him a set why he's given the conclusion that he has. Right, so this is let me take down this. This is Mr. Cleary talking about, okay, can Newcastle do better than Eddie Howe? Which yes, they can.
Eddie Howe as a
Let me just Okay, so it's got the volume. All right, so let me just make sure I got the volume and everything there. All right, excellent. Let's do it.
I like Eddie Howe as a manager and everything he's done for the club, right? Just looking at this purely dispassionately, do I think another manager, either right now or in the summer, could be doing better with this group of players? And yes, yeah, I do think that he's made plenty of mistakes. I can't rule that out. But I also...
All right, so before we get to the but also that is key, and I'm going to be very, very fair to kind of Mr. Cleary as well. So it does come, like I said, he's gone through a load of information to get to this point of, he didn't just start off the show saying, can Newcastle get better managers than Eddie Howe? He didn't just come off with that. And he's going to qualify a whole load of things with that before he kind of gets to that point of what he's saying. And for me anyway, how I've interpreted it, we'll get to it in a moment anyway, because there's a few obviously of you that I've already said obviously that you want Eddie Howe out. You think we can do better, and for various reasons. Some of you have said in terms of what your reasons are. We're going to talk about, drill down some of those issues. So part of the reason why I'm Eddie Howe in, and to be fair again to Mr. Cleary, he was talking about how it's a really 50-50 thing because there's so many things that have been going on with Newcastle, and not all of those things are directly linked to Eddie Howe himself. And he does say what he's going to basically say, we're going to go on to say, is are there managers? Is there a manager who can do a better job in making the right decisions in certain areas that where Newcastle with the squad they got at the moment could be and should be higher up the table? And his answer to that is yes, there are. He then goes on to qualify that, and we're going to talk about it. He goes on to qualify that by saying, but there's not many. And even with the few that can, it's not a guarantee that they will in terms of at this moment right now. And so let's see what he continues on to say there. So let me know what you guys think of it so far. This goes on to qualify what he's saying. Oh, on the wrong screen.
I think it would be absolutely insane to look at the performances, the underlying numbers, the goals they concede on individual errors.
So what he's saying now is, okay, are there better managers than Eddie Howe? Yes. However, it would be absolutely crazy and insane to rule out the underlying metrics. So underlying metrics for Newcastle United are very, very good. So he talked about, if you don't like XG, you can turn away now. But if you look at the XG table, especially the I think it's I can't remember how the term it is, but not the goal difference, but I guess the XG difference, which is quality of goals created against the quality of goals created against Newcastle. So essentially like a points table without the goals, essentially. Newcastle like 7th, and they've been like 7th, 6th, 5th, like all season. The underlying metrics kind of saying, had essentially saying that, when Newcastle are currently 12th, but their XG metrics are saying they should be 7th, is that they're performing like a team that's a top 7 team, but they're currently in the 12th. And these underlying metrics are usually have been proven to be quite good. That teams eventually kind of fall into those metrics in the first place. And now he's saying, obviously, you've seen some of the individual errors. You've seen the back pass from Jacob Ramsey. You've seen the goalkeeper from Pope, and even Chow slip against Chelsea and all these other things. Other goalkeeping errors as well. I've all attributed to these for why Newcastle aren't where they are. So he's gone on to say that.
Chances they miss, the pile up of fixtures, the relentless string of injuries, and then
the injuries, the fixtures. Newcastle have one of the high, in terms of not volume in terms of players, but in terms of days out, players like days out due to injury, Newcastle have the highest in the league.
The only reason this team is currently 12th in the table is the manager. Could another manager be doing a better job? Yes, Maybe, but I do not think it's many managers, and I certainly don't think it would be a much better job. And look, don't get
So yes, are there managers? Is there a manager that can do a better job than Eddie Howe with this current squad? The answer is yes, but there's not many, and they're unlikely to be doing that much better of a job, right? Like it's not going to be significant. Like Newcastle aren't going to be third in the leagues or chasing titles with another manager with this squad, is what he's saying.
me wrong, right? The blame for a bad performance in isolation always falls with the manager. Like, he could have just done something else. He could have done something better. But when you look at the season as a whole, the problems this club keeps having come from the very top down. The lack of
So we're going to talk about in a moment in terms of where the key problems for Newcastle come from. But let me know what you guys think of that, because what essentially Adam is saying is this, and he said it very, very, I don't want to say cleverly because it makes me sound like as if he's been cunning or something. And when I say clever, I think wisely. I think the better word for me to use is wisely, in my opinion. Is what he said. He's not denying, right? He's not gonna do the usual binary arguments in terms of, and football's become very, very binary, and that's part of the problems in these conversations. It's become very, very binary, and it's either you're Eddie Howe in, Eddie Howe out, and I have to justify why I think he's in. You have to justify why he's out, and we just get into kind of sarcastic debates as to who's wrong and who's right. What he said is, at the end of it, is can Newcastle, and even the way he said it actually, rather than saying Eddie Howe in or Eddie Howe out, when he's actually how he actually framed it was quite wide. He said, "Can Newcastle?" Okay, so first of all, he said, "Can Eddie Howe? Should Eddie Howe be doing better with the squad that he has now, despite all the things that we've talked about previously?" Despite having good underlying metrics, despite having bad injuries and bad stopping him, despite having all these errors from players, despite having the inadequacies from the very top, and we know that it's been inadequacies from the very top, because he talked earlier from the show about the fact that Mr. Hopkinson has had to change the internal workings from the board level to like the sign-offs in terms of player sign-offs, and kind of put it to a local level, i.e. I think with him and Ross, rather than leaving it with Piff, where they've had to slow things down. But there's enough games and there's enough situations there to say, should Eddie Howe be doing better? The answer is yes. Are there managers that will do better in this situation? Yes. However, and it's a big however. Number one, there's not many managers. Someone's mentioned Iraola. Iraola hasn't got, in my opinion, isn't going to do a better job than what Eddie Howe has done. I think we're going into the situation, into an elite group of managers who would do a better job. Not people that are even either his peers or below. Not your Silvers, not your Iraolas, in my opinion. Not your Herzlers or whoever else is going to. We're looking at the upper echelons who could do a better job. So that's A. B is, even if Newcastle were able to get those higher echelon managers and those bigger managers, is bigger name managers, right? They would do a better job, but they wouldn't do that much a better job because of that much of a better job. Newcastle wouldn't all of a sudden become, like I said, title contenders and everything else. They're not going to be like 20 points better off. In my estimations, and we did the show last week, and Cleary talked about it, is, for instance, even like Newcastle lead the table in terms of points lost from being ahead, 22 points lost, right? 22 points lost. Even if you just half that, which is 11 points, it will put Newcastle like third or fourth in the table, right? I'll give you that. I'll grant you that. So in my estimations, I think Newcastle should be at least 8 to 11 points better off. Fair. I would agree with you. And I think that's what a top end manager, that like when I talk about like a higher echelon, like a higher echelon, not Iriola. Sorry to whoever said that, not Iriola, but really a higher echelon manager will probably get 8 to 11 points more with the current squad of what Newcastle are doing. And so then the question is, can we get those managers? I think it's unlikely. And even if we could get those managers, and Adam Cleary is going to talk about in a moment, is there's no guarantees with that at this moment of time, because and he's going to talk about the phase where Newcastle are heading into in terms of a very precarious position. And we're going to talk about in the show in terms of the recruitment of at least 8 players, the exits, and everything else is going to come on top of that. There's huge changes that are happening with Newcastle. Is it wise to put in another manager in that moment? So there's tons in that. So let me know what you guys think of that so far. I'm going to play the second part of the video in a moment, but let me just see what you guys are saying in the chats. Christopher says, Philip, did you see the leaked emails from the CEO to all employees? Now the part about the transfers and finding the top youth intake with massive growth. That's not Eddie Howe. Why I want Poch no real manager? So Hopkins, there's a leaked video saying that he wants transfers and finding top youth intake, massive growth. That's not Eddie Howe. Why I want Poch no real manager? What's that? My only confusion is that, do you not like what Hopkins is doing? Do you not like the fact that he's not kind of taken care of, not taken care of, sounds like a hitman, but like that he's not sacking Eddie Howe? Is that the main thing that you're saying, Christopher? Let me know. Christopher says, see, I knew this would come up. Newcastle are a 1 month team, but a 1 month they get to. Sorry, Newcastle's are in 1 and 7. I'm not getting your messages, Christopher, man. My apologies. Connor says, God bless you, Connor. Always good to see you. I'm drinking a lot of water because I'm trying to keep my throat from tying up. Connor says, the manager I would like is Porto manager Francesco Ferroli. Brilliant tactical manager, has 4 to 5 years to play, brings through youth and takes risk when needed. These are all things Howe struggles with. And that's fair, Connor. I think my only question to you, Connor, is, even if we could get Ferroli now, and I'm probably pronouncing his name wrong, is it wise to bring him in now with all the changes that were happening? Let me know. Christopher says, Philip, stop. Howe is on the same level as Harry Redknapp and Roberto Martinez. There are over 20 managers better than Howe. I don't think Roberto Martinez or Redknapp are. Maybe Redknapp now. Maybe Redknapp in his heydays. There's an argument there, but I think I wouldn't discount the fact that Eddie Howe has got us not only saved from relegation. Remember, we didn't win 14 games. No club has ever done that. Not win 14 in a game, a third of your games played, and not only survive but produced Champions League form. Had got 2 Champions League qualifications, won a trophy, multiple semi-finals and finals appearances. Last 16 the Champions League. Various players he's developed and turned around. ID talent through the roof. I just, I think we're underestimating Eddie Howe, in my opinion, from what I'm hearing. Connor says, question. Would the managers being judged season by season, not past achievements? Philip, can you tell me how Eddie has improved this season? can you list 3 things? What I really like about your question, Christopher, and somebody else has asked about it before, is the framing of it is, okay, don't take away his strengths, take away the fact that he's done really real well in the past, take away his track record. It's like kind of like, sometimes in the football debates that we get nowadays, they say, what's Haaland good at? Take away the goal scoring. Take away the goal scoring. What's he good at? And then you say to them, okay, is Messi the best ever? They say, yeah. Okay, take away the dribbling. Take away the dribbling. How he's the best ever. So let's take away, if we're going to have an honest debate or genuine debate, a genuine conversation, why is the first thing we do, the framing of our conversations is always take away the best thing. So take away the fact that he's won trophies. Take away that he's won multiple Champions Leagues. Not won multiple Champions. He qualified for multiple Champions Leagues. Take away that the fact that we're in the Champions League this year, because we qualified last year, and in that year that we qualified, we spent 3 transfer windows, guys. 3 transfer windows where we didn't buy a first-team player. 18 months. 18 months, 3 transfer windows. Newcastle were not able to buy a first-team player. And he won the League Cup and he got us into the Champions League. Name me a manager who's done that. So let's not include that into this conversation. Tell me what Eddie Howe has done well then, because let's not talk about that. Let's not have an honest debate and use that as a situation. Let's not talk about the fact that his talent ID, bringing your Isaks, your Bruno Gomeres's, your Tonali's, your Sven Botman's, your Malik Chow's, your Tino Livramento's, your Lewis Hall's, your Harvey Barnes's, your Anthony Gordon's. Let's not talk about those players. Let's not talk about bringing through Lewis Miley and developing him, Elliot Anderson, and bringing him through. And look what the man is likely to play for Pep Guardiola's Man City. Let's not talk about those things, because then that would mean we're having to acknowledge that he's a good manager. Let's frame the argument, and even you're saying, let's frame the argument in a way where it's then more difficult for you to say, what has Eddie Howe done for me lately? And I just don't think that opens things up to a genuine conversation. And you've gone on to say that, so Philip, can you tell me how Eddie Howe has improved this season? Can you list all 3 things? Well, okay, so let me know what you mean in terms of has improved this season. In terms of what from last season, the season before? I think you went on to say somewhere like managers are judged season by season. Says who? Says it depends on how you want to frame your argument. Just say that's how you want to frame it. Like that, just say that's how you want to frame it. Let's not talk about let's judge it season by season. Let's just do it season by season, because we don't want to then talk about how the summer transfer window was totally ruined because our sporting director Paul Mitchell did a runner 24 hours before the transfer window started. Let's not talk about the fact that Eddie Howe was then called back from his holidays, had to then get these deals lined up, had them lined up, because PIF were too slow in getting them over the line. Your James Traffords, your João Pedros, your Ekatiké's, other teams were able to get in on them. And do we know how we know that? Because we've just read a report where one of the first things that Mr. Hopkinson, our new CEO, has done is changed the internal sign-offs, where PIF no longer have to sign off. We have to wait for sign-off from PIF on players and other stuff. That's the first thing he done, because that was the problem in getting players over the line. So let's not talk about those things. Let's not mention those things. Let's cut that part out, so we can isolate. We can isolate what we think are the bad parts, all the things that we see as excuses as to how the season has worked out, and then so we can blame Eddie Howe. Because Eddie Howe wanted James Trafford, Eddie Howe wanted João Pedro, Eddie Howe wanted Ekatike, Eddie Howe wanted Benjamin Sesko, and he got none of those players. Anybody who's been following Newcastle for a period of time will know that we've been tracking and Mr. João Pedro for the last 3-4 years. Same with Ekatike. I don't understand when we're having these conversations and someone says, but for season by season, says who? You have to try and frame it in a way. I feel like even that question in itself, you're trying to frame it in a way where, like I said, where I don't want you to talk about all these situations. I want you there's no strengths in it. There's no you can't give any kind of reasonable justification as to why the season has turned out the way it is. So we can just solely blame one man, one player, one man for the situation. And the thing is, if we do that, we end up being just like Tottenham fans, Chelsea fans, or other rival fans or just fans in general who lack multi-layered thinking. This is what I got from Terry Flewers from the Football Terrace, and he's so right about this. Is this lack of multi-layered thinking? We have to find one player to blame, one manager to blame, or one sporting director to blame, and once that person is removed, all of our problems are solved. And all that ends up happening is those problems aren't solved. If anything, they just become amplified when you bring in a new manager, when you bring in because all the other things weren't sorted out. I think it's big news today that David Hopkinson has rejigged the internal workings where now sign-offs, like he worded it, are more local. So now I know going into this transfer window, when deals are lined up, like they were lined up last season, but the difference is when they're lined up this season, when deals are lined up, we're not waiting for days, weeks, and months for sign-off from PIF. I don't know who's going to be. I'm assuming it's going to be Dave because he's the highest ranking CEO here, and it might be a multiple of people in the board. I'm assuming in the board that will sign off players, but it's localized. He's talking about localized. I think it's from the local board. So Eddie Howe, our stats people, Steve Nixon, Ross Wilson, Hopkinson, Rubens will all be in a room. These are the players. These are the wages. These are the fees. What do you guys say? Yay, nay, whatever. These are the players who are going to go, and they can just go and get them. Rather than send it off fax machine, however they send it off to someone in PIF, and just wait. So I know we can get those deals done. That's significant. And that's multi-layered thinking. Because then I would say is, had we had that last year, last summer window, we wouldn't have had James Trafford, so we wouldn't have been saying the same errors who's, by the way, just won the League Cup. We would have had João Pedro, because we know how we would have had João Pedro, because Chelsea were looking at Morgan Rogers during that time. Chelsea had enough time, because they were all in on Morgan Rogers for weeks. Chelsea had enough time to change from Morgan Rogers, go to Brazil, and get João Pedro. That's how long we took to get João Pedro over the line. And we didn't get him over the line, obviously. So that stuff is going to be cut out. But so we could have had James Trafford and João Pedro. We could have had Ekitike. Ekitike was in the medical room. Just took too long. We just took too long again. So we could have started the season with João Pedro, Ekitike, and James Trafford. Even with Isak gone, it's more than enough for us to get over the line. But when you say we judge managers season by season, if you want to live life like a Tottenham fan, you can. If you want to live your life like just any fan right now, and my man Ashmatic from Spurs Kings TV will tell you this is problematic, that you have fans that think like this. That all you want to do is just single out, remove any other kind of ways of thoughts and thinking into an area, just so you can isolate the manager, isolate the player, and that's it. And I think I don't want to be that fan, and I don't want our fan base to turn into that. You know, and like me, a Newcastle fan, I haven't seen Champions League twice in 5 years, for nearly 20 years. If you're going to do it season by season, I haven't seen the last 16 of the Champions League. If you want to do it season by season, I haven't seen second year in a row getting into a semi-final of a domestic final if you want to do it season by season. I haven't seen that before. I've never seen that before. But Eddie Howe's given that to us. So there you go. That's where I'm at with it. I think it's important to have, but I do think it's important to have, like I said, more broader conversations on it. Christopher says, stop waffling. Howe has won a cup, same as Redknapp and Martinez. Stop overrating manager. He's flopped with 250 spent for 2 years. He can't in the game manage game Isak. When did he spend that 250? In 2 years, 250 million. In 2 years. In 2 years. He spent 250 million the summer just gone. How much did he spend in the 3 transfer windows before that? 4 transfer windows now, because we've just gone January with no player spent. Why don't you talk about those windows? You can go on transfermarket.com right now if it helps you, and look at what did we spend in the transfer windows before the summer. 0 on first team players. 0. If you want to count William or Solo, it's up to you. Then tell me what other manager has not spent any money like that and achieved Champions League qualifications and the League Cup. It's not waffle. I'm just saying stuff that you don't like to hear. Christopher says, the world of football wake up for 30 years. The rule has always been you are judged season by season. Who's done that? Because Man City aren't doing that. Arsenal aren't doing that. Liverpool aren't doing that. Because if Arsenal had done that, they would have sacked Arteta after he finished 8th 2 years in a row. Now he's on his way to win the Premier League. Liverpool didn't do that with Jurgen Klopp. And they won multiple Champions League and Premier League titles. Had they judged Jurgen Klopp season on season, he wouldn't be there and they would have won less. To me, it feels like all the top clubs, or the best performing clubs, top performing clubs, City, Liverpool, and Arsenal, don't just judge it season on season alone, just alone. But all the clubs who do, Chelsea, Tottenham, Man United, look where they are. I don't want to be that club. O'Connor says Slot won league last season and now he's up for the sack in the summer. Let's see if he gets sacked. Let's see if he gets sacked. How much did Slot get to spend as well? 500, $500 million. I wonder what happened if Eddie Howe gets $500 million. Because the rumors are as well that Slot isn't going to get sacked. You can ask Liverpool fans about this. The rumors are that he's not going to get sacked. Let's see if he gets sacked. Because it's not Liverpool's way to just sack a manager like that. It's not Liverpool's way to just do it. Liverpool fans will tell you this. It's not how they're run. I'm going to continue with the video in a moment, but I love the questions. Otherwise, I'll take a couple more and then we'll continue with the video. Question 4. Is it acceptable for us to finish first 14th? No, it's not acceptable. It's not acceptable. Christopher says, Philip, just put defend Eddie Howe video. You're local about your views. You're telling you, and you have been blinkers on. But let me know how I've got blinkers on. Like, don't just like call me stuff and say you're Eddie Howe defender and anything like that. Just let me know, like, what part have I got wrong? You said he spent 250 million in 2 years. I said he spent 250 million in one summer, which was the summer just gone. Tell me about the January transfer window that's just gone. No money spent. We had the summer that we talked about. Then talk to me at the previous January transfer window. No money spent. Previous summer window, no money spent. Previous January transfer window, that one, no money spent. I don't know why you don't want to talk about those. What does that cause to a team, to a squad? It causes them to stale. Then tell me who's the manager who's achieved more with that. Just let me know. I'll do Connor says we overspent and couldn't spend for 4 windows because of PSR. Yes, because we had to. We had to spend. We had to spend to bring in your Tino Livamentos, your Lewis Halls, your Tonalis, your Brunos, and everything. We had to overspend. We had to bring in 5 players. And do you guys remember that? Do you guys remember us being second from bottom? Oh my word. Do you guys remember us being second from bottom? 14 no wins. 14 no wins. And we had to bring in 5 players, 100 million plus spent, not to improve the squad, to upgrade the squad, to rescue the squad, to rescue Newcastle's season. There was newspaper headlines that Newcastle would be the richest team in the Champions League, in the Championship, because that's where we were heading. So yes, we've overspent to rescue us from relegation. Our floor was so low, it was unbelievable. We only had Jamal Lascelles leave in January. He played in the Championship with us. We've got Championship players in our squad. So yes, we overspent. We had to overspend and we paid the price for it. All right. So let's get on with the video. I didn't expect to be talking about it that much because there's other stuff I want to talk about as well. But let's see the final part of the video where I think he qualifies. So Cleary talks about, he qualifies, okay, is there a manager that can do more? Yes. However, there's not many managers that can do better. And those that can do better, is this the right one? What have I got here? Yeah. And the managers that can do better aren't going to do that much better. I think he can, Eddie Howe, but I personally think we've missed out on 8 to 11 points. That I think puts us 3rd or 4th. For sure. But there's not many managers that can do that, in my opinion. So let's see the final part of that where where I think he gives a more broader view in terms of that.
Right, is that if you can zoom out a little bit from some of the individual games, Newcastle start to feel like a club that is quite precariously placed as high in world football as they are. Like, to both get them there and keep them there, pretty much every single decision on field has had to be perfect. Like, until
we have 0 margin for error. The way Man United can overpay your Rashfords, can have seasons of overpaying Rashfords, Jadon Sancho's, Alexis Sanchez's, all those things, and they can still spend 250, 300 million regardless of PSI, doesn't matter. Newcastle can make transfer window has been near perfect up to this season, is what Adam Clery is saying. Obviously, Wissa had the injury. We bought Wissa, then he goes to Congo, has an injury. That still affected him now. Ilanga's been in poor form, although he's just scored 2 goals in the Champions League. And we have to sell players in order to kind of to be back on track.
This season, it felt like every single transfer had worked out, and the way they set up in the big games was always pretty much spot on. But as you've seen this season, when those decisions aren't perfect, this isn't a club that's ever going to be able to coast through purely on the depth or the quality of its players. So if you think there's another manager out there,
So we lack depth and quality. So and then it goes on to say, so if you think there's another manager out there
who would come to Newcastle and guarantees you a better hit rate with these big decisions than Eddie Howe currently does, then it wouldn't be the worst decision in the world. But
right. Remember, he's not fighting for it. He's saying, yeah, like Newcastle could have, there are parts that Eddie Howe could have and should have done better. Are there managers that could have done better? Yes. But not many. And those and those that could, aren't that much better. Can't do that much better.
Potential pitfalls of getting that wrong or then taking a while.
Let me just rewind that part because he's talking about them. What would happen if that manager were to come in?
Than Eddie Howe currently does, then it wouldn't be the worst decision in the world. But the potential pitfalls of getting that wrong or then taking a while to get things going are massive. This could be another.
And he's going to go into talking about. In fact, let me play it.
A very disruptive summer in terms of outgoings, and I think adding managerial upheaval to that is not something that a particularly well-run club would be looking to do.
And he's going to qualify that. So this is what he's saying. Should Eddie Howe have... Yes, Eddie Howe should have done better with the players that he has available, despite all the metrics and everything else. Should have done better, yes. Are there managers that could have done better? Yes. But there are not many managers that could have done better. Of those very few managers that could have done better than Eddie Howe, not many of them could have done that much better than Eddie Howe. I think 8 to 11 points. Even of those managers that could do better, in the stage where Newcastle are at the moment, where there's huge, he calls it upheaval, I'm calling it a reboot of the squad, and we're going to talk about it in a moment. This show's going to run over. We're going to, in terms of rebooting the squad, we've got a whole heap of players. We're going to talk about changes, 8 players coming in, 8, maybe even more leaving. It's even if you've got that manager, is he going? You're not helping him to make those decisions right within this kind of change. Then he says, goes into saying,
unless of course it's a PR thing to mask its own shortcomings, then he's fucked. But yes, the bigger question, if you are a Newcastle United fan, are you Eddie Howe in or are you Eddie Howe out? Or secret third option, Eddie Howe, shake it all about. Do the hokey cokey down in the...
Right, so that was it. So plenty more there. I'm going to get a few more questions in the chat. I'm going to move on talking about the squad and speaking of reboot and everything else, because it's great conversations. But do keep on sending your comments in chat. Spirit of the conversation. This is what it's all about, having different opinions. Christopher says, when you spend over FFP, stops you from spending, stop crying about it, it's life. 750 million in 5 years. We are the 4th highest spenders since the takeover. Deal with that fact. When you spend over FFP, stops you spending. Yeah. Okay, about its life. In 5 years, we are the 4th highest spenders since the takeover. Deal with that. But what does that mean? We had to spend. We didn't spend. We haven't spent 750 million, by the way. We've spent a little bit less than that. What does that mean? We had a championship squad. Guys, you remember our squad? Matt Ritchie was left back. And Paul Dummett was in centre back with Lascelles. Kraft, right back. Do you guys remember that? Isaac Hayden in midfield. Joe Linton up front. Do you remember those days? That's a fully championship team. And the fully championship manager at the time in Steve Bruce. We spent 2-3 seasons just to raise the floor of that team. Have we forgotten that? That team, Eddie Howe took to the championship. Lascelles played against Mbappe. Lascelles now is in Leicester fighting against relegation. What does that mean when you say we spent 750 million? Is your expectancy now? What was your expectancy, that we should win the league? We qualified for the Champions League twice. We've seen multiple semi-finals and finals in domestic competitions. We've seen the last 16 of the Champions League. We've seen trophy. And we've seen it with championship players. Lascelles lifted the League Cup with Bruno Guimaraes. I don't understand it. I don't get it. Uh, Eddie Howe, Connor says Eddie Howe's a 9-year veteran Premier League manager. Why isn't game management still so bad? I think, like I said, in my personal opinion, I think there's at least 8 to 11 points that we've missed out on. In my opinion, that we could have done better in. Absolutely. At the same time, we can't ignore the same games where we've beat Man United 1-0 with 10 men, beat Chelsea away. We barely ever do that. It's been a real mixed bag of games, and it's not been good enough, to be honest. Of that, I don't disagree with you, Connor. Big up, James. Good to see you. I'll get back to the Kadurian kid in a moment. We're just talking about the good to see Harvey Barnes is playing for England. God bless him. Good to see that. Good to see my man Oliver. Big up to you, Oliver. God bless you. Big up to you, sir. God bless you. Lewis Hall is playing. Good to hear that. Oliver says, exactly, Phil. Bang on. Look, that England team is going to be made out of Newcastle players. Hall, Livramento, former Newcastle, Elliot Anderson, Barnes. Incredible. Who would have thought it? Who would have thought it 5 years ago that we'd have 3, 4, 5 Newcastle, even one at a time would have been amazing. So I think it's phenomenal. When we've talked about Eddie Howe, we're going to continue talking about Eddie Howe, but we're going to be talking about the whole, reboot. Obviously, of a season where we've, as I've mentioned, is this the right slide? No, it's not this one. Sorry, it's this one. We've talked about, there's a Keith Downey. Others have mentioned 8 players in, 8 players out. A whole load of overhaul. Excuse me. And like I said, leading into this, why I'm talking about, I'm going to talk about more on a general point of view before we talk about scouting profiles. Is for me personally, and some of you can join me on the journey, is I want to be able to understand how the transfer window for Newcastle is shaping up. So I got this feeling of trying to be a little bit ahead of the game. It doesn't mean, when I say ahead of the game, doesn't mean that I know what players we're going to sign or what players are going to leave. More in a sense of what is our likely transfer strategy. So we talked about how I felt that if I was Ross Wilson, last week I was saying about, if I was Ross Wilson, I would have I know that there's big senior players that want to leave. I had a number on it, which is about 2 that I would let leave, and they would have to essentially, the rest of the agents and everybody would have to fight it out to get. It'd be like a first come first serve. So wherever the buying club came first to us and gave us the offer that we wanted, that player would go. The rest would have to sit down. And lo and behold, that's kind of essentially played out with the likes of Bruno and Tonali, where it's been said, hey, both camps are fighting for an exit because they've been told, Tonali and Bruno, is only one of you can leave. So what made me, the adjustments I'll make to what I thought would happen is, I don't think we've necessarily put a number on the players that can leave. I almost feel like it depends on when and where on the pitch it is. So In the midfield, we can, I think because Willock is exiting, we can only let another big player leave. They'll leave us with 4. So we'd have to make a recruit 2. And I think it might be not too dissimilar with the forward line as well. So it's kind of like, according to trying to limit, I guess, the damage, as I can think of it, in that area of the field. Because if we let 3 players, both Tonali, Bruno, and Willock leave, we've got 3 midfielders that we have to then buy 3 new midfielders, and that's just too much. Which I think puts us on the front foot. The I newspaper talked about putting Newcastle on the front foot because we're not telling players and their agents, you're not leaving no matter what happens, because that just puts people's backs up anyhow. At the same time, we're not like, hey, we fire sale, all you players can go. No, because we've got ambitions of our own, right? And we've got to sustain ourselves. So I think we've given a healthy balance in terms of letting players and agents know you can leave, or like we're not going to stand in your way. But if Tonali leaves, Bruno, if the offer comes in for Tonali, Bruno, and it meets our requirements before your any offers for you do, then he goes and you stay, which is fair. Now I know agents now are going to ratchet things up. You're going to hear things about, oh, we've had a verbal agreement. They've had a verbal agreement. And everybody knows when you say verbal agreement, especially when it comes to Newcastle, they're going to think of Isak. Isak had a verbal agreement. He didn't. He didn't. And Newcastle have always denied it. And we came very, very quick to deny for Bruno Tonali's camp and said, no, we didn't have any verbal agreement with you. The agreement I think we've had with them, which is what has now been publicized, is Tonali, if Bruno gets a concrete offer, he goes, you stay. Bruno, if Tonali gets a concrete offer before you, he goes and you stay. It's as simple as that now. It doesn't stop agents from trying to maneuver deals and everything else, but they're going to do it anyway. But it puts us, like I said, I think Ross Wilson is handling it so far pretty well. He's putting himself on the front foot. People are still going to engineer moves. And that's what I mean about kind of putting myself in the, I guess, mentally anyway. Mentally for my own good, ahead of the curve. Like I said, I'm not going to know player who's going to leave, but just kind of understanding the strategy. And I think I'm seeing what Wilson is trying to do. I don't want to see these players leave, but I know they're going to leave. And I just want us to be able to recruit things. So a couple of things are happening. I've mentioned already. We're going to talk about the wider things in a moment. A couple of things are already happening where I think, like I said, I think Wilson's made it clear to them who can leave, what Newcastle need. Like I said, if you leave, this person stay. If you leave, you stay. That's how it's going to work out. So I kind of envisage we're going to talk about how many players actually leave, first team players leave, and everything else like that. So that kind of puts us on the front foot, able to handle things, right? So I know either Bruno or Tonali is going to leave. I know either maybe one of our forwards is going to leave. I know that probably Tino is going to leave, for instance. And we're going to talk about it in a moment. So that puts on the front foot. The other thing is what I talked about with the Hopkins situation, where the sign-off for players is going to be handled locally, which I think what I think he's saying is, when he's saying locally, in Newcastle. So I'm assuming the Reuben brothers, rather than PIF in Saudi Arabia waiting for that phone call for weeks and months to sign off, it's going to happen here in Newcastle between Reuben, Hopkins, Wilson, Eddie Howe, and the recruitment team. The players are going to be identified. The deals are going to be given to what they're going to be proposed. This is the transfer fee. These are the wages. Yay or nay? Yay, and we get things done sooner. So I feel more relaxed in terms of like the operation side of things. So if Tonali leaves, I know we've got a replacement, and I know probably got a deal lined up a lot more quicker, as opposed to what we had before, which was insane with Isak and everybody else. So I'm more kind of relaxed from that point of view. I don't want to see Tonali play for Man United or anything like that, but it is what it is, and you got to just accept things for what they are, So same way I don't like seeing Isak playing for Liverpool, but it is what it is. But in terms of from an operations point of view, moving like a big club and an efficient club, I think we're doing that a little bit better. So I'm going to talk about that in a moment. I see a few folks in the chat. I keep on putting up the wrong screen. Or is it the wrong screen? No, it's not. So I'll get that in a moment. But see what you guys are saying in the chat. So I'm going to talk about like the whole thing, and we're going to talk about it as an overview in terms of, okay, what if 8 players coming in, 8 leave, and what the costings and everything else like that. So I've got like a more general kind of perception. I want to get you guys' view on it. I missed the comment above. Is the Harvey Barnes one? I don't know. Send it again for me, James, if you can. Connor says, excuse me. Let me get my water. Oh. Connor says, what would you like to see Howe change next season if he's in charge? Great question. It's not even so much about how. It is and it isn't, if that makes sense. He's going to have less responsibility that he didn't want, which is over the recruitment. He's going to get rest. What I want to see for Howe is going to get rest over the summer. He's had 2 summers where he's had no rest, where he's had to handle recruitment himself because Dan Ashworth betrayed us and through Man United, and Paul Mitchell did a runner. So he's had to handle 2 summers of recruitment on himself. So I want to see Howe take a rest. And then I want to see what I'm hoping to see is better decision making in games. Because you and I know, anybody who's had a career has a career or any kind of type of job, is if you're not able to fully focus on your job because you're doing somebody else's job on top of that, no matter how good you are, eventually it's gonna hamper your performance. And I suspect that's what's happened. I suspect. So better decision making in game, I'm hoping will happen because he's got less responsibilities off the pitch. So I think that's the main thing I'll probably say. Yeah, I think that'll be the main thing. Connor says, I would sell Howe favourite so he can start again and not be tempted to keep playing Trips, Burn, Pope, Murphy, Shaw. Well, let's talk about that. Let's talk about that in a moment. Actually, big up Boba, good to see you. God bless you, hey Phil. It's been a while. It has. You've caught me in a storm. Joking. What Connor says, I think Tino, Tonali, and Gordon will leave. So do I. I'm hoping Gordon doesn't, but I think he might do. If we don't get Europe, which is like I think they leave if we get Europe, regardless. Honestly, Ben White scored for England. Pick up Ben White. Might be playing for Newcastle. Woberdrug says, Philip might be a surprise to you, but I want to stay away from Newcastle. You lot aren't fun to deal with. Only if you approach us the way Liverpool did. Right? Because that Liverpool didn't approach us. They went through the media. They went through his agent. If you know anything about Isak's agent, you know the guy's corrupt and he's been banned from various clubs. And they went to unsettle the player via the media, via his agent, and that's how the whole situation went totally south. We've got a sporting director, guys. His name is Ross Wilson. Just speak to him. If you want one of our players, pick up the phone to Ross Wilson and make an offer. And then we'll take it from there. Big up Register Kev, good to see you. God bless you. Always a blessing to see you on the channel, my friend. Wobo Jog says, another reason to stay away from you is none of the players that might be up for sale are profiles I think Arsenal actually need. I was gonna talk about that, but I'm so I'm not gonna. I feel like I'm gonna have to like sell my players to you. I'm not gonna. I'm like, if you say so, I think there's some profiles that would really help you. Mr. Kev says, Tonali looking good, right, Phil? Hey, look, if you in terms of he is looking good. I haven't seen him play for Italy. He's happy to talk about him if you want to invite me on the show. I don't know if you're still doing YouTube in Register Kev, but I'm happy to let you know the good, bads, and the indifference for Tonali. But overall, he's been very good for us. He's been very, very good for us. He's not irreplaceable. I think there's a player within our team, which is Anthony Gordon, which is a lot harder to replace than Tonali. But yeah, happy to kind of give a profile view of him. Okay, so like I said, I want to be able to give, and guys, if you want Eddie Howe questions, players, debates, anything like that, send them through. But like I said, I want to try and be ahead of the game as much as possible. I've talked about Wilson. I think Wilson's strategies of the players. I think 2 to 3 players will go. I think Connor even talked about them. Tonali, Gordon, and who's the other guy? Tino. As much as I don't want him to leave, I think that's where it is. I think it's going to be handled in a situation where Wilson will say to them, like as he's already said, is Bruno, if Tonali gets a concrete offer and they match it quicker before they match it with you, he goes and you stay. Tonali, if we get a firm offer for Bruno sooner than whoever comes in for you, he goes and you stay. Fair. That's it. Like I said, Bruno's agents are going to be staying. Oh, there's a verbal offer. There's a gentleman's agreement. We've already shut that down because they're going to try and repeat it back to Isak and everything else. Everything goes back to Isak. Trying to unsettle players. It's just nonsense. It goes back to what Warburg was saying. I don't like dealing with you guys. I think if you deal with us straight up, I think that's what you're going to get. Then deals can get done. That's all that happens. So I think that's happening. I think we're going to be able to line up deals a lot sooner and quicker because internally they've restructured it. We don't have to wait for sign-offs from PIF and everything else. All right. Then we've talked about Eddie Howe and that situation where it makes sense for him to leave because if you believe reports, and there's no reason why we shouldn't, because I think you can kind of see we've talked about players leaving. There's at least, there's 8 players coming in. I think there's going to be a lot of players coming leaving as well. I've already set this thing where I've showed you guys before about players that are, high likely to leave, medium likely to leave, low likely to leave. I think with all these reports coming in now, that's really gone high. Obviously, I've got Tino, Tonali, Bruno there. Obviously, either one of them will leave. Willock is high on there. I've put now, obviously, on the back of, and I need to change this and I need to update this. I didn't think this was going to be possible, but in fact, it is going to be possible because they've now Mark Douglas and I've confirmed that Shaw and Trippier are going to be leaving. And that fits into the story of why we're going to probably have 8 new players coming in, because that changes a lot, in my opinion, in terms of the amount of players that coming in. It's a surprise to me, but then you can see a more aggressive shift that Hopkins, Wilson are taking on, which I'm glad to see. So Shaw, Trippier should be in the high, likely to leave because we're not going to renew their contracts. I've kept Gordon in the orange just because I haven't heard as much noise. And I thought it would be Liverpool, that was going to come in. But there's more and more reports to say that they're looking for Yam Diomande. Now all these can change. It might be Arsenal because I know Arsenal looking to Nuno Martinelli, but then Arsenal also looking for Tino. So it's going to be interesting times. It might be a twist of fate that Gordon doesn't leave just because the teams that I think have the money and have the need end up going for other players. If Liverpool go for Diomande and Arsenal end up going for Tino, because I don't think we're going to sell any club 2 of our players. I don't think we're going to do that. I hope we don't do that. So I've kept him in the orange just on that basis. I've got obviously Wissa and Voldemort in the orange there as well, and there'll be other players. So there's a shift. There's a real shift in terms of I think how Newcastle are playing are kind of moving aggressively, uh, even in terms of how the window is shaping up at the moment. And so I said to myself, okay, if it is that 8 players come in, there's going to be X. We know that and we know that there's also areas that Newcastle want to upgrade and change. What's it going to look like? Where are the other 8 players that are going to leave? Right. So I've mapped out here goalkeepers, defenders, midfielders, and forwards. Right. So we know even from the newspaper, we're looking for a goalkeeping upgrade. You know, whether it's Bart Verbruggen or this young man Robin Risa, for instance. We know now, and I didn't think it was possible, but it looks like it will be possible, that both Shaw and Trippier, who would like to stay, but it doesn't look like Newcastle want them to stay, I could leave, which means that, and on top of Tino leaving, that means we'll have no right backs with Tino and both Trippier leave. Because I thought Trippier for sure is going to leave, and we're going to give Tino's for sure is going to leave, and we're going to renew Trippier's contract and bring in some, young emerging talent. But it looks like both Trippier and Tino are going to leave, which means 2 right backs, or speaking of Ben White, a right back who can play right centre back, and we're going to talk about it in a moment as well, or just a right back, or 2 right backs, and obviously a right centre back in Scalvini as well. So those type of players coming in. So there's already 3, and the other one is we know we're also looking for a fullback to match up with Hall, which is really, really good for us because we really suffered not having a fullback there, and a lot of our injuries came from having to try and cover that position. Tino not getting rested, having to go left back to cover for Hall, himself getting injured, then Trippier taking over, playing too many games. Then Miley coming to cover for Trippier. Then Miley getting injured. It just got ridiculous. So we need 2 players in every position. I hope we've learned that. So hence why you see 4 blank areas there where we need just even 4 defenders. And if you add the goalkeeper as well, we need 5 in the defensive line, 5 new recruits in the defensive line. Then we've got the midfield part. And it's been well documented in the newspaper and other areas. Not only is Willock up for exit, and in fact has been identified for an exit, but of course the big news is that either Bruno or Tonali are going to leave as well. So we've got 2 blank spaces there of players that that we need to fill, which makes it 7. Now this is the interesting part, and we've talked about it. And I've kept Gordon in there. The forward line's a bit more trickier because I think ideally we prefer either Whistle or Voldemort to leave, keep Sola and bring another forward and keep Gordon. I think that'd be the ideal world. But I think what ends up happening is that Voldemort and Wissa stay, or Sola leaves, which means that we have to bring in, which is going to be interesting actually, because we don't necessarily get another forward because of Sola leave. We might get another defender, but that might be interesting. But say Sola leaves, we need to get another forward. I've left Gordon there for now, just because as it stands, this is where the 8 positions are that we need to fill. Goalkeeping upgrade, 4 defenders, 2 midfielders, and 1 forward. And obviously that 1 forward has been talked about. The question mark is obviously over Gordon, and that would actually make it 9. We have to make it for 9. So I just kept it there, and I want you guys to keep that in mind for now. So let me know what you guys think of that. And we're going to talk about how much this could cost in a moment. This is how things are beginning to shape up in my mind. The other thing I will add before I go to the chats is, like I said, I don't think Newcastle are going to do this, which is cut corners. I'm going to mention how to cut corners, just because of the season that we've had and just because of how they've talked about Shaw and Trippier leaving. I guess, like I said, my worry is that, say, for instance, we get a Ben White who can play right back and right centre back. We'll get a Ben White in and an emerging right back talent, for instance, and we won't get another right back in, another right centre back in. So, for instance, we won't buy a Scalvini. So we'll end up having 7 defenders rather than 8. And that's what causes problems last time. So that, I guess that's where I think I kind of have a concern that we'll cut corners there. But hopefully that won't happen. And it's not too dissimilar in the forward line, which is, say Usola and Gordon leave, we just buy 1 forward that can play left wing, but can also play up front. I don't think we do that just because we're so heavily linked to the likes of Delap, like a proper number 9. And if a Gordon does leave, then you have to find a left wing forward who we're going to talk about today. So let me know what you guys think about that, because I'm gonna put all this together in terms. I've got like a rough estimate in terms of how much we could earn from exits and how much we could earn from income. And next week I'm gonna actually learn what SCR is, which is the new financial rules, and how it works, and see how much Newcastle could earn and how much it could give us, how it kind of would work in terms of like financial headroom and making for Newcastle to continue moving on. But let me know what you guys think about that so far. But that's what's on my mind at the moment. The key for me is, just before I get into it, actually, because I haven't really talked about too much about what does this do to this team and to the quality of the team, right? And obviously that depends on the players that we bring in. That's why I've liked the links to Ben White and Senesi and those players, because they raise the floor from Trippier and Shaw and Burn and the likes, and they've got that quality and that Premier League experience. Because it's a lot of changes, and I think we are going to get a lot of young players in as well. So going back to Gordon, if we were to keep Gordon and have a Delap, I know some people aren't fans of Delap. I'm not going to change anybody's minds. I personally think he will do really well for us. But having a Gordon, just like having a Senesi or a Ben White, having that consistent quality there, Gordon's goals, his already on 20 GA season, will be so important for us. And if we were to lose Gordon, we know how the right side of our team has been. Number 9's Watermada has been okay. Barnes has been good, but to miss those goals from Gordon would be really, really hard. So I just think it's really, really important to keep. So and he's the X factor for our team. So that's kind of my initial thoughts on things, though I do think that it is likely that Gordon leaves. I don't know to whom. Like I said, that move just could be cancelled out because other teams go for different players, but we'll see. So let me see what you guys are saying in the chat before we do the other stuff. Mr. Kev says, I don't mind, excuse me, let me drink that. Oof. I don't mind hopping on any time, but I haven't done anything since work is crazy. Now I was going to hop onto your channel. Okay, but you don't have a channel. Yeah, I'll get you on at some point, Mr. Kev. You've been phenomenal. Absolutely phenomenal. Connor says, any player that wants to leave this summer, we should just sell them if the fee is met we want. Yeah, I agree. Absolutely. Which the Kev says, realistically, how much do you think Tonali will cost around, since we're heavily linked, of course, and if he pushes for a move, does that change things? No, it doesn't. It doesn't need to push for a move. He just needs to make sure he gets sold before Bruno does. So his fight isn't with us. Do you know what I mean, Register? Register Kev. His fight is with Bruno. We've said you can leave Tonali so long as we get a concrete offer for you first, and our valuations are met. So his fight isn't with Newcastle, it's with Bruno's camp. And that's been documented by Ben Jacobs and others. And in terms of price for Bruno, is going to be the market. For me, this is for me. I think the market for midfielders is going to be set for the Elliot Anderson deal. Just because, now obviously I got no kind of insights in it. I'm just like you guys, I read the reports. But just because it feels like the Elliot Anderson deal, in terms of City, is far along the lines. And I remember talking about this with someone where, and I think the fee for Anderson is looking like it's going to be 70 million. And I think if we use that as a baseline, or if we use that as a reference, and I think Eddie, obviously Newcastle use that as a reference. If Elliot Anderson goes for 70 million, then I think Newcastle will look at it as, oh, then Tonali is worth anywhere between 80 to 90 million. Based on the fact that obviously just quality-wise highly rated. He's played in higher competitions, Champions League, internationally. Italian league is won the Scudetto. And obviously quality-wise is just as good, if not better in areas as well. So the argument I think Newcastle put up is, well, Elliot Anderson, who couldn't get into our midfield when Tonali was playing, if he's gone for 70 million, you know, our base alone might be 80 million, for instance. It depends. So I think it's anywhere between 80 and 90 million, like full, like total package, in my opinion. So you might come up with an offer of like, I don't know, 70, 75 million, 70 million base plus 5 million or 10 million, 70 million base, 10 million add-ons, or 75 million base, 5 million add-ons, 80 million total package, stuff like that. I think something like that happens. If it's just you, we don't know if it's Arsenal going to be in it, anybody else. So we'll see. So I think 80, like I said, anywhere between 80 to 90 million. Connor says 80 to 100 million, which is again, I think Newcastle will start 80 to 100 million. I think that's how they'll talk. The idea being we want about 90 million. So, and if you're really, really good, if there is no other competition, you might get it from like 85, 80 million. So we'll see. James says, one thing that did surprise me. Oh no, I missed Wobojog there. Sorry. Wobojog says, I don't believe this race of leaving between Tonali and Bruno. Both are on good contracts and the club doesn't have to sell. No, it's real. It's real, Wobojog. I think it's partly because I don't want to say I predicted it. I didn't predict it like I'm Nostradamus. I try to think how a sporting director thinks. Newcastle aren't going to get Champions League, or are super unlikely to get. If we're 7 points behind, if we get Champions League, it would be insane. And that's a big thing for both players. If we don't have Champions League, it puts us in a vulnerable spot. And if our stance is we don't have to sell, which is true, financially we don't have to sell, but we're not in the Champions League and bigger clubs come in, it's gonna put us on the back foot. It's gonna put us in the reactive mode. We're trying to avoid the whole Isak saga, and by saying, and And by saying we'll let one of you leave if we get a good offer, it puts us more on the front foot, makes us more proactive with the player, their agents, and the buying club. So if you're Man United and you're thinking about Tonali, and I don't know, City are thinking about Bruno, it's in your interest to not take too long and make those deals happen. And then Newcastle can proactively, so they kind of put everybody on notice, and we've got our own kind of deals and replacements set up, rather than put ourselves on the back foot and say, we're going to hold on, only to wait till the last week, miss out on numerous signings during that time, and just miss out on all these players. So I think it's real, in my opinion, the Bruno and Tonali saga. James says, one thing that did surprise me was how quickly the 16-year-old went through within the day. It tells me that Ross does not mess around. Yeah, and I think we've also got scouts, global scouts that are there. It's going to be a lot that does not hang around. Yeah, exactly. And I think we're going to see more. There's little things that are happening here and there. Like I said, the Hopkinson deal, the Ross staff, the kind of the early days, the early signs of the Tonali Bruno thing, how that's been handled. That's letting me know that, look, we're going to lose players, but we're operating at a good level at the moment, in my opinion. Wilbur Jocks says, don't think we get Gordon and Tino. One is is like a replacement, if not a slight downgrade. Wow. On who? Gordon's a downgrade on who? Martinelli or Trossard? I would have that debate with you. I don't think so. Tino is a downgrade on who? Urian Timber. Okay. Will cost a lot deservedly. So far, this talent, but not his fitness. Yeah, that is the issue. We just don't need that luxury. Even the City, because Tino's camp has been pushing and pushing for a move. And City have gone to Fabrizio Romano and said to him, look, there's no deal that's advanced. I think they're waiting to see if he's going to be fit. Connor says, Shaw and Trips want 2-year deals, but club are willing to offer that. I don't know how much they are. I think they're crazy if they're asking for 2-year deals. I think they must be asking for a year deals because that's what they got last time. And I just get the sense that we want to move on. I get the sense that we want to move on. Couple more questions and we'll get into it. Got way over time, but I'm happy. It's been good. It's been a fantastic show. I had a question. Yeah, Connor says, could you see how I look to turn Miley? No way. He makes a very good right back, Miley. No way. Miley is the heir to Bruno Gomes. Miley's a midfielder. He wants to be in midfield for sure. Wissa and Usola. If we can sell Wissa, if you have any insights on Wissa, God bless him. And I usually like to give players 2 seasons. But this injury and the rumors I'm hearing about it is so dodgy. It's just been such a disappointment, honestly. I feel for him. But if Wissa goes, that would if we manage to sell Wissa, that would I'd rate the window. Register says Voldemort and Wissa leaving would be crazy. They just got there. It will be disappointing because of Wissa's injury and obviously the season that he had. But we just can't afford to carry another player if we were able to sell him. Voldemort is a good player, and we've talked about him. He's got a unique set of skills. He's a really, really good player. So if we were to sell him, it's not because he's bad or he's a dud. And we had a journalist called Craig Hope who put it this way, and credit to Craig Hope, because he said it when Voldemort was banging in and scoring goals. He said it with the way Voldemort's set of skills are and the way we play. He said that Voldemort is the missing piece for another team's puzzle. I think that's more of a high possession team in the Premier League, like a Chelsea. So Chelsea made inquiries about Voldemort allegedly. your Bayern Munichs and everybody else. We're not a high possession team. We're a high pressing, counter attacking team, running in behind. That's what we're looking for. Instance, the likes of Delap. So that would be the only reason. That's the shame about it. Kev says, I'll get Voldemort though. I'm sure he wants to play striker. Was doing good in there. He wasn't. He scored goals, but after a time, defenders worked him out, physically bullied him. His movement in the box is poor. Is very, very poor, his movement in the box. That's something Eddie Howe can change because Eddie Howe is very, very good. But in terms of coaching players and developing players, but we haven't had the time because of Champions League. Voldemort and Neve next season with new striker, possibly. I like the way Neve looks in terms of like his profile, but we'll see. Connor says player I think will leave Ramsdale, Trips. Well, Ramsdale will return from loan. Yeah, Trips, Shaw, Tino, Willock, Tonali, Murphy, Sulla, Gordon, and maybe Wissa. That would, if Wissa leave, that would be incredible for me. Don't want overpriced Premier League players. Depends which ones, because all the ones that we've bought so far have been good. Most of them, apart from Elanga at the moment, but I think he'll turn out to be good. Robojog says, to replace Sola and Gordon, you need to get a Rashford profile right now. I think Rashford himself is a good option. We're not going to get Rashford. But speaking of profiles, we're going to speak about that in a moment. A couple more, and then I'll do the other stuff. You guys have been amazing. Kev says, I personally was thinking we can get Tonali for 70 to 85 million. Not if Elliot Anderson goes for 70 million. Use Elliot Anderson as your reference point. If Elliot Anderson goes for 70 million, you're looking at 5-10 million higher base, in my opinion. But I also think Anderson will go for around 70 million, so we're around the same. We'll see. We'll see what Elliot goes for. Connor says ESPN reported Bruno will sort his future after the World Cup. He won't sign a new deal before. Yeah, it makes sense. He's in the race with Tonali, isn't it? Phil, if it's up to me, Wharton, Anderson, Abodadi, and Tonali. Boy. You prefer Wharton first, then Anderson, then Abodadi, then Tonali. Wow, you got Tonali right at the bottom of your list, but you got really disciplined midfield, so I can see why. Miley is the one. Right, okay. So now I want to kind of just, before I get into the profiles, want to lastly talk about like how it's shit. And again, this is going to change, but this is just me kind of speculating, right? This is the speculation part of it, because it's going to lead me to talking about SCR and everything else in the next show next week. So on the left hand side, let's start off on the left hand side of the screen where we talked about potential exits, and prices and everything else, and how much Newcastle could potentially earn from those. So, like the total player exits, we've got 8. I've got 8 on there. I've included Gordon in that, with an estimated total income of 305 million. I think Newcastle could earn. If I've got my maths right. And I've added the values there. So if you're interested, register. This is the price. So I've got Gordon anywhere between 100 and 120 million. Livramento, and I've to get the 305 million, I've gone for the kind of the medium price. So if I've got Gordon between 100 and 120 million, I've put him as 110 million to the overall price to the total income. So Tino is 60 to 80 million, so 70 million there. 70 plus the 110, 180 million. Tonali, anywhere between 80 to 100 million, so around 90 million. So 90 million plus the 180 is 270. And both Willock and Usola between 15 to 20 million each, which works out, I can't remember, like 30 plus, like 35 million in total, something like that, which then ends up being 305 million. So that's where I got the 305 million. So lots of speculation there, obviously, in terms of price and everything else, but that's how it's shaping up to me. Hopefully we don't sell Gordon, but we'll see. Then you got the potential incomings, and kind of I've taken the rough costs from the players that have been linked to Newcastle, and kind of used the average there. Obviously, it's going to be a bit more difficult in terms of check. Yeah, so we're back online. I knew you guys couldn't hear me. I was saying, can you guys hear me? Can you guys hear me? It's on blue now. Let me know if you can hear me. Check. 1, 2. You should be able to hear me now. Let me know if you can hear me. Let me know if you can hear me. Let me know if you can hear me. I think you should, though, because the thing is blue now. So, and I can hear it in my headphones. Let me know if you guys can hear me. Anybody, let me know if you can hear me, and I'll continue. Yeah, I've got it on here. Now I can. Excellent. Brilliant. Thank you for that, James. I'm paranoid now. All right. So yeah. Let me know if you think what you think of how I kind of how if you think we'll get that high, what do you think of the individual prices and everything else? But yeah, I've got Gordon on free. I've got between 100 to 120 million, and I've worked out the incomings. Obviously, 6 to 9 incomings. I've gone for the 9, though I think it might be a little bit less. It might be 8, which will put it under 300 million. The 9th one being the extra forward, who we're going to talk about in a moment. So I've got at the moment 2 right backs. So, for instance, a Ben White and a Marco Palestra, and a right centre back in Scalvini. Right? So that might be the luxury. I don't know. I hope it's not. I hope we're aggressive. Obviously, I've got the goalkeeper anywhere between 30 to 50 million. So I've gone for the 40 million. The left back in Bueno, the average price there. So we've got goalkeeper, 2 fullbacks, or 3 fullbacks, and a centre back. So 5 defenders, 5 backline players, and then I've got 2 midfielders. I've got Mr. Allen, who's been linked very, very heavily to us recently, even though he's seen as more as a forward, really. I've got Allen and Kamara as an example. And then I've got 2 forwards in Delap, and the left wing forward in Mr. Saeed Al-Mala, who we're going to talk about in a moment, who's been linked to Newcastle United. So at the moment, that's at 325 million. But I can see that being lower. I can see that being lower than by about 40 million. Should we not buy the extra right centre back, for example. So that's how it's shaping up at the moment. Let me know what you guys think. All right, so I want to do a scouting profile in a moment before we conclude the show. Let me see. Yeah. Let me do a scouting profile. So speaking of left wing forwards, and should Mr. Gordon go, do we have a replacement? Well, This man, Saeed Al-Mala, has been very, very strongly connected to Brighton. But Brighton, the word around Brighton is that Brighton have got tons of competition from the likes of Newcastle. And I want to say Villa or Everton. But Newcastle are said to be very, very interested in him as well. Now, Saeed Al-Mala plays for FC Köln in Germany. This is his breakthrough season. He's 19 years old. He's an inverted winger, very, very similar to Mr. Gordon himself. So let's talk about him. He's very tall. Al-Mala is 1.87 meters tall. So I think 6'2", 6'3". Athletic phenomenon who balances street football. Is a street footballer. He describes himself as a street footballer. You will see in our highlights. I'll show you a little bit later. He's unpredictable. He's advancing his tactical maturity. Originally a project. His metric rise from the Liga to the German national team, where he plays now, highlights a player who thrives on responsibility. We'll see that in a moment. So he's the creative outlet for FC Köln. FC Köln are very physical and counter-attacking team, and he's the major outlet for them. So he's not just a touchline dribbler. He's versatile. He's a chess piece capable of operating as an advanced interior or a creative 10. So you can play in that cam-ish number 10 role as well. So that versatility is something that Newcastle are looking for. And this is obviously information I've taken from combined scouting reports. So key attributes: elite deceleration and control. This is why it's important. One, known for his blistering pace, his ability to suddenly decelerate and manipulate the ball in tight spaces against low blocks, especially, is what unbalances elite defenders. His first touch is high level, allowing him to fire in possession based on systems. So really exciting talent. Tactical intelligence, he demonstrates a game understanding of far beyond his years. He expertly identifies when to drop deep to facilitate build-up. Which is important for a counter-attacking team like FC Köln, and when to expect the space in behind the midfield line with vertical passes. Great for a team like Newcastle, who love to have players running behind. The long stride advantage. He's high at 1.87, provides a unique physical leverage. He uses long reach to shield the ball and his massive stride to turn 1v1 situations to clean breakaways in open space. So it's very, very hard to take off the ball. Let me know if you guys have watched him play. And the last one is closer instinct. So he's a calm killer in the final third. He prioritizes efficiency over overplaying, which is good for us. Frequently arriving in the box to convert rebounds and second balls with precise, low margin finishing. So pros and strengths and weaknesses, or pros and cons. Pros: he's versatile. He can play in the left wing, right wing, number 10, or as an interior. So for us, that would be superb, really. And finding a player like that, he can play in those areas as well. He's super, super versatile. The con, though, is decision weight. He can occasionally rush the final pass or shot, which he's 19 years old. I think he can do that. Physical profile is a rare blend of height and power and agility. We've got that in Gordon. Hence the replacement, maybe. I don't know. Let me know, Robojogo, what you think of him if you're there. Defensive discipline, weakness, defensive discipline, still refining a mid-block shadow covering, which is something that Eddie Howe can help him develop. Is very, very important for us. That shadow covering is very, very important for us. And I think that's something that Eddie Howe can help for him with. Strength, mental fortitude, seeks responsibility in high-pressure games. Gordon's very good at that too. Weaknesses, one-footedness. He's biased towards his right foot, can be predictable. So that's something to work on. But I think his ability to shield the ball with his body helps him with that. Pros, transition threat, master of accelerating play in counter attack. Absolutely love that. And weakness, refinement. Passing accuracy is congested zones is developing. Which at 19 years old, playing for FC Cologne, is understandable. But I think we're more interested in his ability on the ball in terms of dribbling to break lines rather than having him kind of like break lines through his passing. We're more looking for those type of players in terms of players that are, good with the dribble, able to get past players and break lines that way. So ball carrying creators is what we'll call them. Right. So the verdict is he's a confirmed phenomenon and one of the most exciting breakthroughs in German football, by combining the physical dominance of power runner with technical seeding and creative playmaker. I can see why Newcastle are after him. Elmada is the ideal long-term project for elite clubs like Barcelona or Manchester City. So you can see where the scouts see him going. He's a freestyle artist currently evolving into a disciplined European reference player. And I think, should Gordon go, having him play and on the same wing as Barnes and giving him that time to develop and to get into the pitch and put together that street ball with a highly efficient left winger that we need him to be in goals and assists would be absolutely superb for him. Absolutely superb for him. So before we look at his contract and injury record, let me see what you guys are saying. Have you guys heard of him before? Do you rate him? I'll be really keen to know. James says, I haven't looked much into the Brazilian yet. Forward Cam. Yeah, I have a little bit. I wanted to do a little bit more before I talk properly on him. I think Alan Elias. James says, looking into him with the Cone winger, he looks like a brilliant replacement of Gordon, to be honest. He does, like on the surface of it. I'm scared to say, not scared, I'm reluctant to say, yeah, he's the guy, because I haven't seen him play. But Brighton are after him, which is a big tell. And the scouting reports are really, really hot on him. And his height, physicality, and ability on the ball says Gordon, but with the added street baller flex, is interesting. Robojog says, Phil, if the lap is what you're looking for, how about a Delap Pro Max? What we even do Sopsies with the Voltamada fella. If a Delap is looking for, how about a Delap Pro Max? Who have you got for us? Who would you have? We can even do Sopsies with the Voltamada fella. Really? Who do you want us to do Sopsies with? I'm familiar with him, but seems like the type you need. But seems just like the time you need. You have enough out of possession oriented players. I think you can afford to carry a player that have a bit of mavericks in possession. Yeah. I don't disagree. Though I think he's also been rated for his work rate. Eucharist, nah. Never. But let's look at his injury record and his contract. If you see his injury record at the top, he's 19, so he's got nothing really at the moment. Let's say nothing. He's missed 5 games last year of a torn muscle fiber, which happens when you're breaking into the first team. 23 days out, 5 games missed. He had a dead leg as well. Though his lasted 6 days, Miley's lasted 2 months or something. So typical stuff when you're going into the game. Nothing to be frightened of at all. His salary for us is very workable. 13 €17,000, which is about 10 grand, with 3,000 bonuses, so about 17 grand, 17,000 euros a week. So about what, 12 to 13 grand a week. You know, we can double, treble, and we're more than fine with it. He's in a long-term contract though, which doesn't run out until 2030. So that puts Cole in a very, very good position as well. So let's see how that one develops. But if you look at his heat map compared to Gordon, for instance, Gordon on the left is shown from left going right. So you can see they're very, very similar. The Gordon has begun to play a lot more centrally for us. Obviously, that's more to, you can see the heat map in the central areas in that cam kind of role, or cam number 9 role, because obviously Wissa and Voldemar haven't been playing. But Mr. Saeed Al-Malam can do the same thing as well. And he's taken up similar positions, obviously not as much as Gordon, but he's there. So they take up very, very similar positions in what they're doing. And he does look more and more like a direct replacement should we get him. Now, I think that's the pitch that Newcastle, I think Wilson and Eddie, I was going to say Eddie Murphy, Eddie Howe will be giving him. So super, super interesting players. All right, so let's have there's one more metric I wanted to look at. I wanted to compare his metric on data MB with Gordon before we look at a highlight. So let's do that. Let me just set that up before we go. So big up to Data MB. They're even following me, Data MB. So big up to you, Data MB. You know, you guys got like 125k followers. You guys are following me. That's incredible. All right, so let's look at Mr. Saeed, and then we'll compare him to Gordon. So again, big up to Data. I'm not just saying that because they follow me. I've been with them before they followed me, but Data MB are fantastic. Their metrics are really, really good. They use some of the stuff from Y Scout. I'm sure Robojog and other people on here know them. And I want to give you guys accurate information. Right, so there's a couple things I wanted to keep in mind before I do comparisons, right? Because we don't just want to do, as we always do, like radar pattern comparisons without giving context. So I'm going to show you his metrics first. Then I'm going to show you FC Con's metrics compared to Newcastle. So it kind of hits home in terms of the environment and the context of where he's playing. So Saeed, this is metrics here. You guys can see that on here. So non-penalty goals, he's like in the higher metrics altogether. He's in the 99 percentile for non-penalty goals. So he's very, very efficient goal scorer. Doesn't 81 percentile for dribbles, 70 percentile for progressive carries. He's a ball carrying creator and efficient with goals as well. Non-penalty, 89 percentile for non-penalty XG and for assists as well. So he's a creator all round. Key pass is a bit low. Like I said, he's not the type of guy to be unlocking defenses with his passing. We're not looking for a guy that unlocks his defense with their passing. We're looking for a guy that can get past the man on the ball. 70 percentile for crosses completion, and he's played 1,500 minutes this season. So he's a big creator. Some similar places to him so far. Mason Greenwood, 24-25 season. Cody Gakpo, 24-25 season. Yankuba Minte. Do you guys remember that guy? Yankuba Minte, 24-25 season. And none other but Harvey Barnes. Harvey Barnes, 24-25 season. So you can see why, for everything we discussed, through scouting reports, through the data MB metrics that we're looking at, and the similarities to other players, that there's 2 Newcastle players already, or former Newcastle player, Minte, who are already very, very similar metrics. So he's got Eddie Howe DNA about him. Before we do a direct comparison to Gordon, let's first look at FC Con and compare them to Newcastle so we understand the context of what he's playing in. Now, Con are in the blue. Newcastle are in the pink here, right? So with that Newcastle, obviously, both teams, the main similarity, well, there's two really, but the main similarity between both teams is the physicality and the goals, right? So we'll focus on the physicality part, which is both teams are 78, 77 percentile teams. So both teams, and when we're talking about data MB physicality, how they measure it is aerial duels, the combination of aerial duels and ground duels. So both teams are very, very, very physical teams. And what they said about Con was that they're like a counter pressing team. They're also a very, very physical team. They try to unsettle their opponents and then set off counter attacks, right? Hence why their counters, you can see here, are so high as well. They're in the 79 percentile. So get physical with them, get into a low block, get physical with them, and then explode and get up the pitch and get into those open spaces in the back where Mr. Mr. El Said Al Mala can use his progressive carries, his dribbles to exploit those free spaces and get in behind opponents where he's in a position to score and assist and be efficient in those areas. So they're not a high pressing team, Cone. Very much not. They're in there. You can see them in their own space there. It's been physical and hitting teams in the counter. That is their main thing. So that's the main difference, and that's why you see those carries very, very different. Where it will change for Saeed should he come to Newcastle is that his pressing stats and everything else are going to have to go a lot more higher. And there's an upside to that because then he's not going to have to pass 3-4 players every time to get somewhere. But he's defending against transitions and the shadow marking that we're talking about, covering this, knowing when to move, making sure that the space when he does press, that he does it in a way where he understands the space is leaving him behind and everything else will be quite different, and it'll take him time to adjust to that. Hence why having a Harvey Barnes there, so we can allow for a more in-depth integration to the squad for Said El Mala rather than just throwing him in is so crucial for us. But that's the environment that it's from. And in terms of FC Con, the counter-attacking team, to then moving into a high-pressing team into Newcastle. But he's got all the attributes. And we know that because his attributes matched up those of teams, of players that have played for Newcastle in Yankuba. Well, Yankuba hasn't played, but this is why he chose him. But Harvey Barnes, essentially, another. So it's very, very clear. So let's match him up to Gordon before we look at his highlights and we move on. Let me see if you guys have got anything in the chats. James says, so he's done today 12 goal contributions this season, close to what Gordon is doing for us. Has Barnes scored? Big up Barnes, man. He's Corn's inside forward. Right. Big up. Thank you for that. Thank you for that, James. Right. So let's compare him to, now that we've got the context and everything else out the way, let's compare him to Gordon. No, that's Jay Gordon. That's not the Gordon. Gordon 25-26 season. Right. So Mala is in the, make sure you guys can see that. Yes, you can. So Mala is in the blue, Gordon is in the green. So what you can see is that Mala excels in a non-penalty goals XG. We know that Gordon's got a lot. And remember, this is matching Gordon's Premier League stats rather than his domestic cup competitions and Champions League, I think that'll be different. And this is matching El Mala's Bundesliga stats as well. So they're quite different as well. But there's some interesting parts to it as well. So let's talk about the differences mainly. So his non-penalty goals and non-penalty goals XG are far, far higher than Gordon's. And obviously that's because he's the main creative outlet. And Gordon hasn't been as good in the Premier League as he's in domestic competitions, though that is slowly rising. But where there's some good similarities is in the dribbling. So both players are in the 80 plus percentile. Gordon's 86 percentile in the dribbling, in dribbles completed, and Almada's obviously in 81.1. Ball carrying, both are very good in the ball carrying as well. You can see here, where is it? Well, Gordon's in the 80 percentile for ball carrying, whereas Almada's in the 70 percentile for ball carrying as well. So Gordon obviously excels in those areas. Key part, hold on, let me just start with crosses. Gordon's excels in the crosses, but we are a crossing team. So you can see Almada has it in his locker, 70 percentile, Gordon's 87 percentile. I think Almada playing for a high pressing team who focus a lot on flank play and crossing. I think you can imagine that going up. But where Gordon excels a little bit more than Almada is in the key passes, the 76 percentile, where Almada has been noted in his even in the scouting reports where he struggles a little bit there for whatever reason. Let's see if that changes if he's playing for a high pressing team where he's going to need that a little bit in his locker, at least in terms of trying to turn things around for his team. He's not going to always get past 2 or 3 players. Can he unlock a team or create shooting opportunities for his teammates via his key pass? And that's the main thing. But there's a lot of good potential there, and I can see why Brighton haven't quite crossed the line with Almada, and Newcastle are really pushing, must be really pushing hard for Almada, especially if Gordon goes. I think if Almada is secure by Newcastle, I think there's something in the water when it comes to Gordon. So some really, really good stats there from Almada. From what I've read and what I've seen, he comes across as very, very impressive. So let's look at his highlights before we wrap up the show. Let me see if I can find them first. Actually, I didn't get a chance to set it up. But let me know what you guys think of him. Let me know what you guys think of him. Me personally, from the scouting reports, from everything else, I'm very, very impressed. Let me use Brazil Scout. You know me, guys. I love me some Brazil Scout. Let's get him on the screen. Can you guys? I know you can't see that. Good thing I checked. All right, brilliant. So let's have butchers on him. Make sure you guys can see that. Yes, you can. All right, brilliant. Let's do it. What can we get from big up Brazil Scout? Obviously, this is from 25, 26. There's a lot more newer comps as well. But they've compared him to Kvaratskhelia. Amazing. Kenan Yildiz and Young Verge. I don't know the last fella, but some real good comparisons there. They're also noted as 6'2", 72 kg, left wing, right wing, cam, preferred foot, right foot, is heavily right foot. Though they've got ambidexterity as part of his attributes. That's not what the scout reports say. Athleticism, work rate, ball control, acceleration, flair, dribbling, pace. That is all there for him. All right, so let's see what he's saying. All right. He's doing them young man celebrations. German international as well. Powerful dribbler, runner. You can see it straight away. Incredible right foot there. That's where he gets his goals from, just outside the box. Lovely placed shot there. Again, by the touchline, drags it, holds the ball. And you can see that where they're talking about that acceleration and deceleration that troubles the defenders. Lovely, lovely goal. Lovely place goal as well. Just him picking it up, driving into the field as well, so you can play into that more inside part of the pitch. It's a big player, strong. Well, megged him there. Can he get the cut back? Lovely goal. See him there as well, playing for his country, coming from that right-hand side. He's very right-footed, though, from what I've seen. And I know they're comps, but he's very right-footed, you can tell. Picks up with his left there. Good goal scoring. Past the man there. Great acceleration. It's got really, really good acceleration. And because he's big, you can't just shrug him off the ball like that. Oh, lovely there. Does the body shift as well. Gets past his man there. Great individual goal there. Playing for the German national team. Picks up with his right. Back to goal. Again, dribble. Pass again. Shows strength. Here's a cross there. The striker should have done better with that. That's him on his left there. Can't see, the sun was burning, getting everything out of the way there. That's him on the left hand. He can use his left foot. That's him playing on the left wing side as well. Picks up with his right there, but that's a goal. It is, yeah, fantastic. Big fella, lots of flair. Dribbler, I think he's very right footed in my opinion. You can see the acceleration, but he passed it there with his left foot, which is good. Look at the outside of the right. But you see how he preferred to use the outside of his right foot rather than use the left foot? It tells you a lot there. There's a good outside right foot chance, but you can tell that's what he prefers to do. Again, cutting in, holding it up. Powerful runner. Great goal. So let me know what you think, guys. We've done the metrics, the scouting. Lots of news on him. Very interesting play. I think it's like James says. I think it's a great option. But let's see. But let's wait and see what Ross does. Absolutely. I think all in all, as always, I'd say I prefer Gordon to stay. But if we're accepting the reality of things, that if a club should come in with a good offer, a big club of Champions League is going to be very difficult too. But if the fact that we've got Barnes there, who can hopefully he can rotate with, he can learn with. They've got a very similar style of play. Obviously, he's got more of a dribble. They haven't got a similar style of play, but they've got they do metric wise, but he adds that flair, that dribbling ability. He'll be able to learn from Barnes in terms of how the team plays, as well as the coaches. And I think he adds a lot of the stuff that we would miss with Gordon, which is the dribbling, the goal scoring, and he's got that in his locker. And we're getting him at 19. The world is his oyster. So let's see what happens there. I think that'll be phenomenal. But guys, you've been absolutely phenomenal. Again, we've done nearly 3 hours. I start early because I'm going to finish early. But it's been so good talking to you guys about Eddie Howe. Should he continue to be a manager or not? I think he should. Talking about breaking down the various issues around Newcastle, but also talking about other news. Great to hear that Hopkins has kind of changed up the decision making within internally. That it's not just in PIF no more. That it's now, when it comes to signings, it's done internally and locally. So hopefully we can get signings over the line a lot more quicker, which will be positive. The transfer strategy, discussing that, seeing whether 8 players are likely to exit, whether 8 players are likely to be recruited to, has been really, really good. Big up Mobile Joe. No, we just want the best for and talking about the overall strategy for the summer window. And with the scouting profile for Mr. Said Al-Mala, would he be a good replacement for Gordon? And there's a lot of potential there for sure that he has. Can we get him over Brian? If we do, I can tell you for sure that Gordon is certainly on his way. But as always, guys, some of you have been here from me from the beginning. Some of you have joined in, you've engaged, you've commented, you've liked, you've shared, subscribed. Please do continue doing that. I look forward to the next show because now that I've got the what I think Newcastle will be earning through the transfers and be spending, we can see how does that match with the SCR. So do look out for that show when we talk about what is SCR, what does it mean for Newcastle in the transfer window, for not just for this one coming up in the summer, but for those that are going forward. And obviously any other transfer news that we're going to be talking about, lots more scouting profiles, lots more transfer strategy going forward. So do look out for that. But as always, folks, make sure you're having a great evening wherever you are, whatever you're doing. And as always, folks, take care and God bless you all.